Week 4 in college football was one of the best football weekends I've had in a very long time. Week 5 is shaping up to be just as good, and the Iceman and the Coach are here to break it all down. Let's get after it, fam. This is College Kickoff Eve. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to College Kickoff Eve. It is week 5. The Iceman is here. The Coach is here. We are brought to you by INC Sports. We're going to get after it today with a jam-packed show, but we want to welcome back the Coach. Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Iceman, doing well, buddy. Another week behind us. Looking forward to another loaded slate of action this week. So really excited about that. A lot of really, really good games. But if there's anything that kind of Budge has taught us, there's no such thing as a week slate of college football, right? And I think that we made that mistake going into week 3, right? Thinking it was a little soft. Turned out to be fantastic.
Yes.
And we got another good one on tap.
Yeah, we definitely have a good one on tap, and we did not get to record again this week, so I want to give a big shout out to Dave of Political Football for stepping in this week. We had a great conversation. It is now live on YouTube and in the audio space, so you make sure that you check that out wherever it is that you consume the INC content that I know that you all love. Want to welcome everybody to the stream today. We hope you have had a good week. Right now, live as we speak, the Oregon State-Utah game is starting, a very big game for our man Tyler Budge, but also for the Pac-12. And things are kind of starting to shake out a little bit in college football. It looks like Cam Rising is not going to be playing tonight, so Utah is going to be down their best quarterback, but they've been managing to sneak out wins, and it's been fun to watch them. So we have that game going on. We'll give you some live updates as we go. Did you take a bet on the game?
I did not. To be completely honest with you, and I was looking earlier, I think it just totally escaped me that game was happening tonight. It was definitely a game that was on my radar because it's I feel like it's very pivotal in the Pac-12 picture because we're either going to start to see a couple of these teams really separate themselves, or this is going to be the start of mass chaos in the Pac-12 because there are a lot of really good football teams in that league right now. I think everybody's aware of that fact. And if Utah were to win this game, that takes Oregon State to 2 losses, and Utah would still remain undefeated, and it would get, I think you'll start to see some separation. If Oregon State wins, like I said, I think it could be the beginning of just chaos, which honestly, I love that. I root for that. Even as a Notre Dame fan, it's in Notre Dame's best interest not being in a conference for this crazy stuff to happen and to have conference champions with multiple losses if that happens, so but even beyond that, just it's fun to see. It makes things exciting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the Pac-12, the ACC, they're more competitive than I think we thought they would be getting into this
Absolutely.
season. And there's nothing wrong with that. Parity is always a good thing. However, speaking of Oregon State, I did as a courtesy to Dave because number one, he filled in for this week and he was in the live stream last week. We all know he is a major Michigan fan. He took a big dig at Ohio State in the video, called them pillow soft. So we made sure to represent him here. We're now up to 6 schools somehow of people that have come in. We're going to make sure to have this show during the broadcast a little bit more frequently. And it's just always good to see a variety of schools. So I think we have done a very good job of sort of making sure that we account for them. So it's been pretty cool to see this grow, and we will hopefully add to that as we go along. But pretty cool, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny, like I was just thinking to myself as you're talking about Dave and being a Michigan fan. I know he's a Detroit Lions fan as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
What a difference a decade makes, right? Because 10 years ago, not even that, but let's just say that because it sounds nice. 10 years ago, Michigan football was kind of average.
Yep.
At best, they were, at that point in time, they might have been in the Brady Hoke days, possibly. And
Rich Rod.
then end of Rich Rod, maybe beginning of Brady Hoke, somewhere in there. And then the Lions have just been very mediocre for a very long time, outside of a couple of solid seasons. And right now you have Michigan, ranked second in most polls. And then on the NFL side, the Lions are looking really, really good. I actually talked to somebody my boss at work today, she mentioned she has a really good friend that's a Packers fan, and she ran into him last night before the game, and he was trying to hurry to get on his phone to place a bet. He's like, "This is an easy win for the Packers." Like, this is I watch football. I'm like, because the Lions are really good. Like, you know, this is not the traditional Lions that everyone's used to.
These aren't your daddy's Detroit
These aren't your
Lions.
daddy's Detroit Lions. No way, man. These are Man Campbell's Detroit Lions, and I love
And
it.
if you watch the Packers game last week, it took Derek Carr to get hurt in an 18-point comeback. I mean, that's a pretty sizable comeback in the NFL. And they got down 24-3 in this game. There was no coming back from that. Listen, Jordan Love is playing better than I think a lot of us thought. I mean, he certainly looks like a rookie out there, and it's fair because this is almost his rookie year if you really think about it, given the reins to the team. And the Lions are playing like a complete team. They're gelling together over the last couple of years. Jared Goff seems to have the weapons around him that maximizes his skill set. And I think that the Packers at 2-1 were kind of ahead of schedule. So it makes sense to me that the Lions would be favored in this game. But this goes to show you, man. Remember, you were talking about Chicago radio and how they were offended at a 1-point spread for the Bears against the Packers in week 1. And the Bears look like one of the most inept teams we've ever seen.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And I'm happy for Jared Goff too, because when he left Los Angeles, I think everybody believed, okay, like he was propped up by Sean McVay, and Sean McVay's system made him look really good. And so, he kind of gets dispatched to the Lions in a way, demoted, if you will. And he's been really good. I think just last night was his first interception in like 14 or 15 games or something. They said he was like on the verge of a record.
Yeah, I think it
And
was the previous game when he threw, or maybe it was against the Seahawks where he had almost 400 attempts without an
that might have been
interception.
what it was. Yeah, and just that's impressive, man, especially today. I mean, the best quarterbacks turn the ball over, and from the Packers side of
Yeah.
things, they have a lot to be optimistic about. They've been spoiled, right? You're on the heels of two back-to-back Hall of Famers for the last 30 years basically. And it's your turn to have to kind of build it back up without having that star quarterback. And Jordan Love, I think, is going to be really good. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
I think there's an upside to Jordan Love, and I do promise we will get to college football in a minute. But I said this about the Chargers last week when we recorded with Cleve, and I said, think about the Chargers having Phillip Rivers, who's probably going to walk into the Hall of Fame. I mean, I think by the numbers, he's a Hall of Famer. And now they have Justin Herbert, who very well could end up being a Hall of Famer with the level of talent that he has. And the Chargers have done nothing
Yeah,
with that.
nothing to show for it at all. I mean, that's it's really sad. I
Yeah,
mean, I
and
remember Philip Rivers and the Marty Schottenheimer days, man. Like, as a Colts fan, I hated playing those guys. With Rivers and LaDainian Tomlinson, it's like they were a pain in the ass, but they just couldn't get it done in the postseason.
Marty Schottenheimer got fired the year they went 14-2. Like, that's just the most ridiculous thing. And the other stat that I saw was, I think Lovie Smith, when he got fired, the Bears have had one 10-win season since, and he was like 81-63 as Bears head coach, and nobody else has come even close. So it just goes to show you, though, to bring it back to the college game, a lot of these quarterbacks that are out here playing have a lot of upside, have a lot of potential when they play in college because the level of talent that's around them, depending on where they're playing, is a lot less than it is in the NFL. I think Zach Wilson is a perfect example of that. And where you go in the NFL after this level matters. Some guys have it. You can tell just by looking at them that they have the talent that's going to translate to the next level. But not all of them do. And some of them are just really great college quarterbacks. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's a different game. Like Tebow, probably one of the greatest college football players of all time, but never was going to have the technical skills to be able to make it in the NFL. And I want to give a shout out to Mike. First time in the stream, I think. Good to see you, buddy. Go Colts.
Heck yeah, man. There's a lot to be excited about the Colts too. Talking about a really talented rookie quarterback, right? And I know he's banged up right now, but I kind of have a soft spot for Gardner Minshew. I just like him.
Big win. Big win.
Yeah, huge win, man. But maybe the Ravens may not be what we think they are. But no, glad to see Mike in here hanging out with us. But no, you're 100% right. It's very interesting to see how some elite level talent at the college level does not always translate into the NFL, because I think the NFL is about purely talent alone in most cases. talent and work ethic. I think those weird little intangible things can make a big difference at the college level. And that's where I think a guy like Tebow comes in. I think things like his leadership, um, the way he was able to motivate people around him, all that stuff, that doesn't translate to an NFL locker room, unfortunately. And that's one of my favorite things about college football in general, is I feel like it's sort of high school football on steroids, because they still love the game. They're still hungry to get to the next level. So you're getting the best of people for the most part. And then, as much as we would hate to believe it, because any of us would like give anything to make the league minimum and just be on a roster, right? But those guys, after a while, they look at it like a job, just like you and I do. I've got to go to work today, and I think that just sort of get complacent about it after a period of time, and they just don't have that same passion and motivation that you see at the college level.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, when you're a professional, it does feel more like work. And that's one of the things I can't remember who I was saying this about. It's the Dolphins. How the Dolphins look like they're having fun. Like they look like they're
Yes.
playing football with that passion that you want to cultivate at the lowest levels when you start playing football. And it's nice to see that. It's refreshing to see that, especially out of professionals. But I want to transition back to last week because you mentioned you mentioned somebody that actually was in on my radar for how I was going to segue, but let's just go into it now. Let's go back to your trip to South Bend. Oh, so I want to say something because you talked about guys that are, in college and don't translate. And I think Ohio State in some regard can be considered a school that doesn't have the translation sometimes to the NFL. It depends on what position that you're playing, but this Ohio State team comes into South Bend, you're at the game, excruciating loss, all that kind of stuff. But honestly, man, it wasn't even what happened on the field that piqued my interest. It was Ryan Day after the fact. And I talked about this with Dave. And he basically said that his reaction to Lou Holtz calling Ohio State soft, which Lou Holtz is an old senile man now, basically. Like, why do you care? But
Better watch it.
hey, I've never been much of a Lou Holtz guy, I'll be honest with you, but I'm also not an Ohio State guy. But Ryan Day's tirade after their big win, when they score the game winning touchdown, when Notre Dame has 10 guys on the field, so it takes one man down to get that play to go. And to be so fired up about something that a coach who hasn't been on the field in 30 years has to say about your team, it made me feel like he does believe that his team is soft. And Dave was very strong in his assessment that Ohio State is soft because their coach is soft and they have been soft the last couple of years. So I want to start the broadcast there.
Yeah, I think there's no denying that Ryan Day's got some thin skin, I think. And I think he's very unlikable, just nationally. I think Ohio State fans for the most part love the guy. And I heard Joel Klatt had a really interesting take on that whole conversation. And he goes, to most of us when we see that, we're like, what is he doing? He's like, but if that's how you felt about it, he goes, you need to understand that that message wasn't meant for you. He's like, but I guarantee you that Ohio State players, Ohio State fans were like, yes, that's my coach. You know what I mean? And that's who that message was intended for. But I'll say this: I think what you saw there in that immediate after the game reaction was a guy who was probably standing there on the sideline, being like, "Holy shit, things are about to get really, really crazy for me if we don't find a way to win this game." I mean, because Notre Dame, by all accounts, Notre Dame had a beat, man. They had them dead to rights and just snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, that's what happened. And hey, Ohio State made the plays, made the big plays when it mattered to win the game. So I'm not taking anything away from them. But when I think what you got was, we've all been there, right? Where something we wanted so bad or that was so important to us was going really, really poorly. And all of a sudden, just in like the snap of a finger, it changes and you come out on top. And I think that sort of wave of emotion can make people react in weird ways. And I think what you saw there was kind of almost the emotion of him being relieved in a way. And the fact that he was relieved, he's feeling real good about himself and decided he wanted to take some shots at Lou Holtz. What I don't understand is, at this point in time, now Brian Kelly didn't do a very good job ever of involving or including a lot of Notre Dame coaches and players from the past. Lou Holtz is on record talking about like writing him handwritten letters multiple times without a response, and things like that. Marcus Freeman has done a much better job of um, embracing the Notre Dame traditions and the Notre Dame family. So at this point in his life, Notre Dame's essentially parading Lou Holtz out there like a mascot in some ways. And being a 86, right, or something, being an 86-year-old man,
He's old.
yeah, I mean, what do you expect? And
Yeah.
he's on, the Pat McAfee show, and he's being interviewed by a guy that's dressed up to impersonate him. Okay. And he makes some comments about how Ohio State's soft, and they weren't like outlandish. Those aren't outlandish takes.
No.
And but it's just funny that it's even on Ryan Day's radar, and maybe it's just, and we're gonna get to something like this later when we talk about Dan Lanning. It's sometimes you just got to find that one thing to motivate your team, or that one thing that can be the catalyst of whatever it is you need to do. And as a coach, I know that I've been there. Sometimes you're grasping at straws a little bit of what's the thing going to be that you can use to uh light that spark. And maybe for Ohio State that was it, man. Maybe it was Lou Holtz, and whatever, use what you got to use to find a way to win, I guess.
I guess, but I think that Dave said something astute when he said that think of Ryan Day as politicking for his job for later in the season because their schedule doesn't get any easier. And I think what this game showed is that Ohio State is not built currently to beat a lot of the teams that they're going to have to beat if they want to win a national title. I think even Michigan in their own conference, like Michigan seems like they are built to outlast Ohio State and outscore Ohio State. And I think that it's interesting because Budge is really high on Ohio State now. He's like got them as the national title winner after this win. And it's interesting to see like two different perspectives on how this win comes out.
Yeah.
But when I see this game, I in my mind think this is an indication that Ohio State is actually kind of soft. Like if that's what they're using for motivation and their coach is so fired up. Like the issue I had with it was I rolled because he isn't very likable, at least not to me. And it also came off super fake and sort of derivative. Like he's almost faking that intensity to prove a point. And you're proving a point to like a 90-year-old man who cares? Like that's what I mean is like who cares
Sure.
about that? And it made me laugh because I'm like, just when I think that I can't despise Ohio State more, something like that happens.
Right.
And he comes out with something outlandish. But you mentioned Dan Lanning, and I think that was the story of the weekend for many reasons. But it again had nothing to do with what was on the field. It was all the narratives before and mostly after the game, right? So you talked about Dan Lanning, and his speech went viral, which was ironic because his speech was about how they were about substance and not clicks, basically. And he allowed ESPN in there. And you obviously know that that's for recruiting purposes. Like he's got to show all these future kids that could go there what he's all about. I think he meant it though. Like I think what he said he meant, and I think that it was fine. Like it was coach speak. It's what all coaches do to motivate their team. And every team that plays Colorado and Deion Sanders is going to use that because that's what it is. That's what you're battling. And I thought that was perfectly fine. But man, I'll tell you what. You want to talk about finding out who hates Joy after that game? All the people that were on the hate train for Deion Sanders. My goodness.
Yeah, so I agree. I have no problems with what Dan Lanning said at all. And in his press conference this week, he was asked about it immediately, about his
Of
speech,
course.
and he stood by what he said. He goes, he goes, people are looking at a 15-second snippet, right, of what happens in a locker room. He goes, as coaches, and this goes back to what he says, as coaches, we have to use everything we can at times to motivate our players. And I think that whatever you can dig up that's gonna, just like I said, continue to light that spark for people and add that little extra edge, you're gonna use. And I don't have a problem with him using that whatsoever. And then in the same press conference, he was very complimentary of Deion Sanders and what he's doing. He says, guys, he's like, look, what he's doing is great for college football. He's like, it's fantastic for college football. He's doing something great there. There's no doubt that he's building something that's going to be successful. I mean, he wasn't going at him at all. I don't think that Dan Lanning personally has a problem with Deion Sanders. He was just using something in the moment to motivate his team before they took the field that have that little bit of extra edge, and it wasn't anything derogatory or
No.
hateful. It was the truth, really. I mean, it's the truth in
Well,
a lot of ways.
that's the thing, though, is like when what he said were about substance, not style. Deion Sanders himself even really said that. And also, Deion knows that he doesn't have the players because he said that. Once I have the big guys up front, then watch out. He knows what he has. You've said it how many times on this show when we first started? Every coach knows what he has in his football team. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter how much he wants to convince himself. He knows.
Yeah.
You know deep down. And Deion Sanders knew. And the outcome of that game wasn't surprising to anybody. As a matter
No.
of fact, the people that thought that the 21-point spread was insulting to Colorado was actually probably more insulting to Oregon.
Yeah, probably so. I agree. I wasn't surprised at all by the outcome of that game. And we started to see the signs of that in the
And our newest
Nebraska.
recruit is here.
Oh, we got James.
Come on. Oh, yeah, we got to pick a game. That's right. James, by the way, so for everybody that's on here, hello to our new recruit. Say hi to everybody, buddy.
Hi, everybody.
Excellent work. Excellent work by you. Okay, dude, so you want to pick a game, huh?
Yeah.
All right. All right, can you say hi to Coach?
Hi, Coach Brad.
Boom.
Hi, James. How are you?
All right.
Good.
All right, dude. Here we got a game on right now. You see this one game over here?
Yep.
Okay. We have Utah and Oregon State. Can you say Utah
Utah.
and Oregon State?
Oregon State.
Perfect. Okay. Now, who is going to win? Oregon State or Utah?
Utah.
Who is going
like
to win? Utah or Oregon State?
Utah.
Okay.
Oh,
Utah for the win tonight. Budge is not going to like that. Sorry, big guy, but it looks like the Utes are going to pull it out right as Oregon State is driving it on the 3-yard line. So, all right, buddy. What
I
do you want
agree,
to say
James.
Yes. What do you want to say to everybody before you go to bed? Great. Perfect. Signing off. I love you, buddy. Can you say bye-bye to everybody?
And then Alabama's gonna win too.
Okay, put that
Oh,
down too.
all right.
Alabama's going to win. Great. By the way, funny story while he's still here. Last Saturday morning, he woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I went into his room. The first thing he said was, Daddy, Alabama's going to win. He doubled down on his pick from last week. And guess what? The Tide pulled it out against Lane Kiffin and the boys. So
Great
we
pick,
got
James.
the prognosticator of prognosticators. All right, buddy, it's time for bed. Can you say goodbye to everybody and have a good night?
Bye, everybody.
And
Good
what?
night, James.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Okay. Awesome. Good job, dude.
And then I hope Alabama's gonna
Okay, great. I love you, buddy.
You got your
I
hands full there with the Tide fan in the making.
That's funny. I forgot he knew about that.
That's
All right,
great.
dude.
No, that's-
Roll Tide. He just said roll tide. by the
Roll
way.
Tide.
Yes. Okay, great. That's perfect. All right, go see your mother. No, you cannot have that. Go see your mother. Let's get moving here. Obviously, he needs to be coached up a little bit. We can't ask for perfection all at once. All right, our
Picks.
next.
We got more than we bargained for, man.
Well, he doesn't know who Alabama's playing. So you heard it here first. Our recruit has picked Utah, the Utes of Utah, to beat Oregon State. And so we will see how that goes out. If he wins, he'll be 3-0 in his picks because don't forget, he picked the Super Bowl live when we were on the feed.
He did.
And he picked Alabama last week, which came to fruition. And you picked Alabama, I picked Ole Miss, which we'll get to later. So back to Oregon. I just think that it's interesting to watch how many people are anti-Deion Sanders for reasons that seem like they have nothing to do with football. And I know that like you and I have talked about like the racial elements of it and stuff, and we kind of wonder about it. But I think that there are overtones of that for a lot of people for some reason, well, for one reason or another. And I don't think it was a Dan Lanning thing. Like if he was taking it on Deion Sanders personally, it's probably as a colleague, as a coach, because here comes this guy who's never been at this level and is getting all the attention. Like I get that because you and I both know that anybody who comes and talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk is annoying.
Yeah.
It's annoying, right? And teams that get overly covered, it's the reason why is Cowboys fatigue, there's Patriots fatigue, all these teams that are on national television all the time.
Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. And I get it. And Dan Lanning used that as material for his team, and they came out and made a statement. And that's what you want to do as a head coach. And Oregon knew they were going to win. They came out and won definitively, left no doubt, and that was what they should have done. And I just thought it was fascinating just how vitriolic the whole thing was. Like, People were arguing over this on social media like it was something legitimate to argue about, and it's sad. Just
It
enjoy
is.
it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's like we talked about before we started, right? There is a certain segment of the population that is, let's just face it, like that is uncomfortable with a person like Dion
Yes.
behaving the way he behaves in the
Yes.
role that he's in.
Yes.
It goes against like the grain of the tradition of college sports and coaching and everything else. But I think that what's been really refreshing is just as much as he is maybe flamboyant and loud and I don't know, proud of what they're doing, which he should be, he's been very realistic and honest at the
Yes.
same time. He's
He's
made some
authentic.
he's
Authentic for
and
sure.
I've been refreshed to see that because like with the Travis Hunter thing, right? He came out and made a statement about like, the Colorado fans and their behavior and how that kid was just playing the game hard and stuff like that. And I give him credit because that's not something you really see any coach do.
No.
You know what I mean? And like I think stereotypically people would have expected Dion to come out and like take shots at that kid in some way, shape, or form. But he did not.
But if you did, you don't understand who Deion Sanders actually is.
Right.
In my opinion. I mean, to be braggadocious and the way that he is, here's the thing about Deion, though, and this is, I think, important, that if you're offended by how he carries himself, he's always not only talked the talk, but walked the walk. Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famer. He has been successful at everything he's done. Everything he's done. So it's not as if he's not earning all of these accolades. To take a team that was 1-11 the previous year, keep only 3 kids from that team, and start the season with 3 wins is miraculous. It's nothing short of miraculous, but it's going to take more than that. They're going to have to recruit their ass off, not just in the transfer portal, but they're going to have to do legitimate old school recruiting to fill up that roster to get the big boys that they need to compete. Because that's what happened in this game. Oregon bullied them on both lines, lines. And Bo Nix is a significantly better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders right now. I don't think that that's debatable. I do. I think that he is.
Bo Nix has better protection and probably a couple more weapons, right? Because we saw how long it took Shedeur to figure things out against Colorado State once Travis Hunter went down. And I think that if you gave Shedeur Sanders, if you put Shedeur Sanders under center for Oregon with that existing team, I think he would look just the same.
It's
As
possible.
Bo Nix, So I think quarterback for quarterback, if you take the rest of the team out of the equation, which isn't possible, but I don't think that the gap's that large. I'm not saying that Bo Nix doesn't edge him out. I'm not saying that at all, but I don't think that the gap is that big. I think I've been very impressed with what I've seen out of Shedeur Sanders. And when you get in a game like the Oregon game, which I didn't have the ability to watch it to South Bend at the time, but I know he turned the ball over a few times, you got sacked a bunch, but like you get down, man, you're just trying to find a way to make plays.
Yeah.
And you're going to turn the ball over when you're trying to do that. You're going to take risks you wouldn't take otherwise. What do we got here?
No, I mean, he's saying exactly what we're talking about is that the thing about it, and we've spent a lot of time on last week, but the thing is though, there's a different way to coach for everybody. Not everybody has to be the same way. I think that the times of those old like Bo Schembechler types, right? The old school idea of what we embody, and even a Nick Saban. Nick Saban is more old school than new school. There's no doubting that, right? And what these guys are doing, like Marcus Freeman and James Franklin and Deion Sanders are all black head coaches at prominent universities and prominent programs. They're being successful. They all are different. They coach different. Their kids are different, but that's the point. Right? You go to Notre Dame because you want to be coached by Marcus Freeman. You go to Colorado because that is what makes it work for you. You go to Penn State. You go anywhere because it works for you. It doesn't matter what you look like, but you always are going to gravitate toward personalities that match with you, temperaments, scenarios, like environments. There's a reason why we choose to be certain places at certain times in our life, because the situation is right for us. And I think that people want to put this blanket idea of what a college football coach should be like. And Deion Sanders is representative of where we are in college football. Like you said it, take all of your ideas of what college football is or was, it's no longer that anymore. You know what I mean? It's no longer that. And yes, that's the thing though, is they're all different and great in their own way. And like you can be excited about what Marcus Freeman is doing is great. And he's doing everything the exact opposite of what Brian Kelly did, which is refreshing on so many levels, so many levels. And it's exciting for that reason too, because I'm sure the fan base is like, we're kind of happy to see this guy go.
Yeah, he's like knocking the dust off Notre Dame a little bit, right? He's taking the stuffiness away that I think that the national perception and narrative has been for so long. And he's able to go in like their last, and my dad would probably know more accurately because he's way more tied into this stuff than I am. I mean, I follow it, but like their last 4 or 5 commits have been from the South, have been from Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, like SEC country. And that wasn't a thing that was happening under Brian Kelly. And I think part of it, though, that helps is you have kids that say, hey, it's one thing if you have, just look side by side, Brian Kelly, Marcus Freeman, and they're selling you the Notre Dame vision, right? The big thing about Notre Dame, beyond the national football presence and everything else that comes along with the football program, is they sell the concept of 4 for 40, right? 4 years here for 40 years, the rest of your life. The Notre Dame degree is so valuable beyond football, being a part of the Notre Dame alumni base and everything else. Like, essentially you graduate from Notre Dame, you're going to be set for life in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
And getting that message from Brian Kelly versus getting that message from Marcus Freeman is vastly different, right? Because if you get a kid and he's like, hey, like this guy looks like me, he talks like me.
Yes.
We have a lot of things, like he listens to the same music I listen to. I mean, he's not that much older than me. I mean, I just that shit matters, man. Like that matters to kids a lot, as opposed to if you had Brian Kelly in a Hawaiian shirt, faking it, basically, like we saw him do when he got to LSU with the Southern accent.
Just
right?
about to say that is the type of thing that you can tell. And that was the way I felt about Ryan Day and what he said was that like it felt performative, it felt fake, and none of that is what you want. Like your kids can sniff that, and I think that everything that's happening in college football, like the unlikable guys, right? There are unlikable guys in every sport, and that's cool. You can't like everybody, but there are a lot of good coaches out there that are doing things their own way. Deion Sanders is doing it the way that he knows and the way that he's going to be successful, and he's been successful. So just leave it at that. All right, so we're going to sit here at the top 10 as it currently sits. Not much change has happened all that much outside of Notre Dame dropping, I think, to number 11, but the top 10 has stayed pretty consistent. The thing that I'm just tickled by, 4 teams from the Pac-12 in the top 10 right now, which is not what anybody thought was going to happen.
And that'll shake itself out over time, right? That's going to work itself out. They're all going to play each other to some extent. I think the biggest question mark in the Pac-12 with the teams in the top 10, I think, is Washington, because there's some people that are really, really high on Washington.
Yeah.
And there's some people that are not high on them at all. And the unfortunate part is they haven't played a very strong schedule at this point. So I feel like we haven't really gotten a clear picture of how good or bad, they're not bad, but like, how we haven't got a clear picture of how good they are yet. And, so it'll be interesting to see how things unfold there in the Pac-12. One thing I'll say, though, to kind of contradict what you said earlier about Ohio State, I take exception a little bit because, you kind of presented it as if the Notre Dame game maybe exposed Ohio State in a way to being maybe not quite as good as they would need to be to win the Big Ten or to be, up there in the college playoff picture. And, my response would be, well, it's kind of the way I look at every game when you have these fan bases that get out of whack about what happens. It's like, hey, it might just be that the other team is really good too. And, I think Ohio State has an elite defense. I think they have a very, very good defense. Offensively, they have weapons, but they have, that they're still growing, right, with an inexperienced quarterback. But the Notre Dame defense is a like a top 10 defense too, So when you look at scoring defense and everything else, so it's not a surprise to me that that was a low scoring game because you had two very good defenses, and Notre Dame did a great job of shutting down Ohio State's receivers. I think that they combined for like 80 yards, like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Mbuka, I think is it something like that's his name. And they did a pretty good job at shutting those guys down, which was impressive. And even in the run game, they gave up 100 and I think Notre Dame gave up like 120 yards of rushing, but 64 of that was on one play.
Yeah.
And so they're two very good defenses, and I think that it's my hope, and maybe this is just the fan in me. Maybe this is wishful thinking because obviously it bodes better for Notre Dame if Ohio State runs the table and wins the Big Ten and beats Michigan and Penn State and everyone else along the way, and because then that makes that loss look even better. So maybe I'm just painting the narrative a little bit.
No, I when I say that, I mean, I'm not even sure Ohio State was built to beat Notre Dame. Like, I think Notre Dame, if they played, I think Dave said if they played a best of 7, it's definitely going to go 7. Like, this is not a wash where Ohio State is, like, they won, and a lot of people feel like they should have won by a lot. Like, I saw that. You saw that too, where people felt like Ohio State was vastly a better team.
Which was preposterous to me.
I agree.
That's what I understand that.
That's what I'm saying. Is like, for all of that credit that they're getting, they're the number 4 team in the country, but you have to ask yourself, like, are they the number 4 team in the country? And I think they're going to get a test as they go along because Penn State, I think, is pretty good. It's going to give them a run. Michigan looks like what they're doing is like boa constrictoring. They're suffocating teams in the second half. And can Ohio State get over that hump? Because don't forget, they've lost to Michigan 2 years in a row by a lot. Like 20 points or more in both games. That looms large over Ryan Day. It looms large over those players. And Jim Harbaugh is back, and those kids are playing really well. They're playing really gelled. And that's what I'm saying is not like, I don't say it as like, oh, Ohio State should have beaten Notre Dame. It's like, I'm not sure they actually should have beaten Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame was the better team and should have actually won that football game because if they have 11 guys on the field in the last play, that guy might get stuffed. The game's over. Notre Dame wins. Yeah, and we're talking about Notre Dame at number 4 or number 5 and not Ohio State. That's what I'm saying is like,
sure.
It was not a disparaging comment toward Notre Dame at all. It was actually like, I actually am not sure Ohio State's built to really beat Notre Dame like consistently the way that it's currently constructed. And so that's why I think Ohio State is going to get tested. I mean, I don't know. Like, my question is like, if they lose to Michigan, do they still make the playoff with the rest of their schedule? I don't know. Like, we're going to find that out, and we won't find that out for a while. But they're going to have some more tests on there, and I think that we're going to know more about Ohio State in the next month or so than people think. I know Budge is very high on them, but I just don't know, man. Like, Notre Dame was the better team.
Yeah. Oh, I don't disagree that. I mean, Notre Dame beat Notre Dame in that game in a lot of ways. But again, when it comes to playing championship football, championship teams make championship plays in championship moments, and Ohio State did that, and Notre Dame did not. And so at the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? And my dad's right that on that last offensive series, if Notre Dame just would have kept feeding Estime, man, like, and make Ohio State use their last timeout and run the clock down a little bit more. There's so many things that we could look back and critique about that game that could have been done differently. But again, like I said, it comes down to championship teams make championship plays in championship moments. And Ohio State did that. Notre Dame did not. And I did like your comparison or your analogy as far as Michigan to a boa constrictor. I've heard that a couple times, and it's very true, right? Because they're not real flashy when you watch them. Like a boa constrictor compared to, you think like a cobra or a viper or something. They're kind of slow, sluggish, but it's like once they get a hold of you, man, they're just going to squeeze the life out of you, and then that's what Michigan does. You're right.
It's not too dissimilar from like the Yankees in the 90s, where once you get to Mariano Rivera, game's over.
Yep.
Right. And that's kind of what it's like. Rutgers scores first on Michigan. It was either last week or the week before. I can't remember. And it didn't matter. Right. They're out 7-0. Doesn't matter. Michigan comes out, leads at halftime, and Rutgers never even sniffs inside the red zone. Like that's just what that team is built to do. And if Michigan is able to score more points than Ohio State is, and Ohio State's offense is going to, it's not going to look the way that it did against Notre Dame. It is going to get better. Those things happen through time and consistency and reps. But are they going to be able to keep up if Michigan comes out and scores 24 in the first half? And with that defense, the way that they're playing, I don't know. That was my point, is if they looked this way against Notre Dame, which is a team that they're maybe slightly better than, even slightly worse than, like, nobody's going to look at both of these teams and be like, oh, one of these two teams is way better than the other. Like, they're very even. What's it going to be like if they play a team that's better than them? And if they do get by Michigan, what's it going to be like if they play some of these SEC teams? Like if Georgia makes it there, are they going to be able to keep up? They did last year. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, is we don't know. And what we have coming up for this week, though, in our Homer Hour section, Notre Dame has another big game where they travel to Durham, North Carolina, the epicenter of college football all of a sudden, and they have the Duke Blue Devils. Notre Dame is a 5.5-point favorite on the road against the Dukies. Now, Duke has not been known for very long for having a great football program, but that win against Clemson to start the season put them kind of on the map, and they've played some really solid football. So how you feeling about that game?
Well, I knew coming into this season that Duke was going to be a good football team, and their head coach is former Notre Dame defensive coordinator Mike Elko. And the one thing we know these are facts, that this Duke team is smart, they're well coached, and they're going to play disciplined football. Like there's no doubt about that. Like it's not a game where you're going to be able to just kind of do your thing and wait for them to make some mistakes, because they're not going to make a lot of mistakes. They have a dynamic playmaker at quarterback and the Leonard kid, and he's going to cause some problems. And he's the type of guy that there's some quarterbacks that will run if they have to. This is a guy that he will not hesitate to pull the ball down and make a play with his legs. So I'm curious to see what Notre Dame does to contain that, especially with how much they've shown to want to blitz throughout this season.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball, because once you blitz and overcommit, that opens up a lot of running lanes for a running quarterback. So, and I'm not crazy about the idea of putting a spy on somebody either, because I feel like you're almost just taking a guy. You might as well play with 10 guys.
Yeah.
In some instances. But I think that this is a good football team. Notre Dame's gonna have to play well. But I'll say this: when you look at their schedule outside of the Clemson game in Week 1, they have not played a great schedule. Otherwise, they played Lafayette, which is an FCS program. They played Northwestern and UConn. But in those games, now they have not allowed more than 14 points. They allowed 7 to Clemson, 7 to Lafayette, 14 to Northwestern, 7 to UConn. So they've done things well defensively, and offensively they're scoring points. I mean, their lowest output was against Clemson. It was 28 points, but since then, 42, 38, 41. So Notre Dame is probably the best team they've played so far.
Yeah.
And I think that if I was Duke, I would have almost wanted to play Notre Dame if they would have beat Ohio State.
Yeah.
You're going to get, and they're probably like shit, because you're going to get the best version of Notre Dame tomorrow night. I feel really confident in that. And if that's not the Notre Dame team that shows up out there, then I'm going to start to have, I'm a huge Marcus Freeman fan, but if they come out tomorrow and they don't seem like they're locked in,
wait a minute, you're not going to fire Marcus
No,
Freeman,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it'll be at that moment, though. It'll be a moment where I start to say, okay, like he's still got some learning to do, which he does. But I mean, like I fully expect though them to come out tomorrow night locked in, ready to roll, sound and aggressive. And as long as we see that, I'm going to feel pretty good about it. And if Notre Dame plays that game, I feel really good about their chances.
All right, that's fair. I think that they too are going to have a good game, but we're going to get to that in crunch time. We're going to both officially pick that. But I think when you come off of a loss the way that they lost, I think Freeman's a good enough coach, a motivating coach. He's going to be able to get these guys to where they need to be for a game like this, because you can't sleep. You're traveling on the road to a team that is hungry. And you say it all the time. They're not going to have the luxury of getting looked over by the Duke Blue Devils. So I think that's going to happen. But for Virginia Tech, we'll go over this very, very quickly. After another excruciating loss, they are now 1-3. They host the Pitt Panthers, who are also 1-3. By the way, Pitt is a team that poor Budge early in this season or early in the offseason said was not going to make a bowl. And those fans came after him super hard because of how great things were under Pat Narduzzi. And he gave it was such a detailed thing where he went like point for point as to why when this thing happened, they lost their offensive coordinator and now they're sitting at 1-3. The over-under on this game is horrific. The Virginia Tech offense is horrific. Pitt is a 2.5-point favorite on the road at Blacksburg, and I think that Pitt's going to win this game. Like, there's just no convincing me otherwise. And Budge seems to think that Brent Pry might be on the hot seat. What do you think?
Maybe. Now, the question for you I have as you with you being a fan is, do you feel like, let's say that Virginia Tech is able to salvage something close to a 500 season? Like, is that considered adequate progress for him to keep his job? Or do you have to just rip the Band-Aid off and move on and try to get better as quickly as possible? Like, I mean, at what point do you think administration really has a clear picture of like, this is our guy or this isn't our guy? Because if it's not your guy, but you like him and you want to give him a chance, you're sort of wasting time,
Yes.
right? By keeping him around. I wonder though, I mean, is Pat Narduzzi on the hot seat too a little bit?
Probably.
Especially, I mean, let's say they lose this game to Virginia Tech. I mean, is this the game of hot seats?
Well, the thing about college, here's my thing. I think a school like Virginia Tech is not in a place where they can be so picky and fire a guy after 2 seasons. Like, unless something catastrophic happens that is like obvious that you need to get rid of this guy. Like Justin Fuente, there were kids leaving through the transfer. Like, they were transferring so frequently that you had to look internally and ask yourself what was going on. In this case, you have a lot of kids coming to Virginia Tech via the transfer portal. They had a pretty decent offseason with that. Right now, their quarterback, Kyron Drones, came from Baylor. So they're able to get talented kids to come there. And I think at Virginia Tech, the way that it happened, you have Frank Beamer, who's an institution, still is there. Fuente starts out hot. Everything that you read says that he just did not get along at all with the people of Blacksburg, didn't get along with the administration. And so you bring in a guy who used to coach under Frank Beamer, who is from the area. You got to give him time. And I guess in my mind, I'm like, I get that you want to have results, but can you really expect such a quick turnaround from a guy that isn't Deion Sanders at a school that doesn't have the resources? Like, Marcus Freeman can take over what Brian Kelly had, but he also is handed a brand. He's handed the Notre Dame brand with everything that it comes with the education, the pedigree, the winning, the championships, right? That's an easy sell. And then he adds his own personal stamp on top of that. But what are you selling for Virginia Tech? Nothing, right? You're not selling anything. So to expect that all of a sudden, like, whoa, all these people are going to be like, I'm transferring to go play with Brent Pry. Like, that's insane. Yeah. Because Penn State players, even though he was the Penn State defensive coordinator, they're not going to leave Penn State. Like, they're not going to leave for the defensive coordinator. They're going to leave for a head coach. And that's what happens all the time. So I think you have to give it time. And what does success or progress look like? My only complaint is that the offense looks stagnant. So, like, they're going to have to figure out, one, how to get playmakers and just be more dynamic. They're going to have to play more dynamic than other teams. They just are. And you need guys that are faster. You need an offensive scheme that's exciting, because you're not just going to win traditionally. They can't run the ball. So I don't know. It's annoying that they're this inept offensively, the same that they were last year. The defense has been fine, mostly except against the run. But I think you need to give them more time. I just don't think 2 years is enough, is it? I mean, you're taking over. Like, it's kind of insane, isn't it?
Well, and let's say that, the time comes where you do move on from him.
Who then next?
But, like, not even that, but when it comes time to search for the next head coach, you don't want to have this perception that, like, you're not going to have time to come in and turn it around. They're like, hey, if in 2 years I don't get the ball rolling, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to go take that job. And let's just be honest, like, these days, like, Virginia Tech is not a prestigious enough job to take that risk for, Now, like, if you had an opportunity to go to, like, a Big Ten school, not even all of the Big Ten schools, but like
most
the Michigan, like Michigan State, like, so if you had the opportunity to take the Michigan State job, even though it's kind of in shambles right now, and you thought that like, hey, I got 2 years, like you'd probably at least roll the dice on that, right?
Yes.
Because if you're successful, it's a home run. And it could be life changing for you career wise. But another thing is, I think it makes what Frank Beamer did so much more impressive.
But they
And
gave him the runway. He was there for 6 years losing. He didn't
right,
make his first bowl game until like year 7. So they
and,
gave him the runway.
right, and it was also maybe in a little different time,
It
right? Because
was.
now with the transfer portal and NIL, it's so different because you have to re-recruit your kids every year. I mean,
Oh,
to keep
of
them.
course.
And let's be honest, like what he had going at least was championship level football. So without that, and this is no offense to you or the fine people of Virginia Tech, but
Don't care.
without that, what do you have to draw a kid to go to Blacksburg, Virginia for 4 years?
Oh, I agree.
You know what I mean?
And that you could say that about so many schools.
Well,
So
up
many schools.
South Bend, Indiana would be the same thing if it weren't for what Notre Dame is. I mean,
And that's why I said that about Marcus Freeman, not to disparage him as a candidate for head coach, but that's a job that comes with you are handed an easy recruiting pitch just by all of the history that comes with it, the institution that comes with it. And a lot of coaches, when they take jobs, are not handed that. Now, the other thing I will say about Brent Pry, though, is or any job in the ACC is like the ACC is technically so open every year that you should be motivated to come in and try to steal that conference in So I think Brent Pry should keep his job after this year because last year he was handed a team, a bunch of people left. First year, can you really expect great results after everything the way that it ended with Fuente? This year, you're now looking for, I think, improvements like micro improvements. And it'll be next year. If next year they look this inept, then we got to think and be serious about, okay, maybe this is not the right guy for us because what's happened? Like they're not doing enough. Like they're not improving enough. 3 years, I think, at this point. And if you can't figure it out after 3 years, then we got to look for somebody else. And look, there's going to be a lot of young head coaches who are going to be amped for the job. And they might find the right guy. And it's going to be a great time if Blacksburg is lit up again because, man, they're ready.
Yeah, and you made a great point, right? With the ACC being wide open, and it is right now because Clemson is maybe on the decline a little bit. You got Florida State up and coming, but they're not quite, they have not anointed themselves right as
Nope.
officially the top dog. Miami's creeping up there. Obviously, Duke's having some success. North Carolina's looking, but none of them are like established as the top dog.
It's ripe for
And
the pickings
it's
right
right
now.
for the pick. It's much different than say, for example, if you got a job at Indiana, right? Because it's like, what's your ceiling is like 6th place, I mean, there's just you may get a really good class and have a good year here and there, but I mean, you're just buried in that league. And even in state, you're not even the best school in your state, as
Nope.
far as from a recruiting standpoint and everything else. And so I think, yeah, a job at Virginia Tech and in the ACC specifically would be more appealing because it's right for the picking in a Power 5 conference. And he seems like a really good guy. Brent Pry seems likable, and
They really like him locally. Like a lot of the locals really like him. He's doing what you talk about Marcus Freeman does. He's very involved in the community. That's why I think you got to give him some time. Like
Yeah.
this year, this is his first real year where he's doing true recruiting because when you take a head coaching job at the end of a season, you're trying to figure out who's leaving, who do I want to keep. It's a rush job. That's why what
you just
Brian
got to
Kelly
fill the roster. I mean,
Yeah, that's why what Brian Kelly did last year when they lost at the beginning of the season, everybody laughed at him, and then they crept up and ended up making the SEC title game. That's what good coaching does, right? But I think time will tell on this. But before we transition into the games of Week 5, my man, we also want to give a shout out to our partner and sponsor, New Era. If you are looking to buy a new cap like this one, which happens to be a New Era cap, then you want to go to www.neweracap.com/Iceman and use the code Iceman to save 15%. The holidays are coming up, don't forget. So you want to use that code to not only help us pay some bills around here, but maybe to make a loved one happy. So, my man, Week 5 coming up. So right now we got Utah and Oregon State. Now my man James picked the Utes to win this game. Right now it is 7-0 Oregon State. Oregon State is driving, so his pick is looking a little shaky, but that's why they play all 4 quarters, my man.
Do not despair.
I do not. Now Utah, of course, very talented without Cam Rising. And I think if they had Cam Rising in a game like this, they would be the favorite. And they just got to hold on. If this is their only loss before Cam Rising comes back, I still think that they're in play for the playoff and in the Pac-12, obviously. But this game just shows you, I don't know if a lot of people circled this game on the calendar as one to watch, but you got what could have been Cam Rising and DJ slinging it all over the field. And it's cool because the Pac-12 is going to break up after the season, and this is what they're breaking up on.
You're not going to try to say his last name?
DJ Uiagalelei.
Oh, that's pretty good, man. That's much better than I would have done.
Don't mess with me.
Like I said at the top, I think I'm rooting for chaos a little bit. So chaos would include Oregon State winning. But that being said, if I had to pick this game, I would pick Utah. I think they're the better team. Even without their starting quarterback, I think they have enough to get the win. Obviously, being on the road isn't exactly helpful.
No,
but we'll see.
Hostile environment looks like too.
Oh, I'm sure, man. I mean, the Pacific Northwest is no joke, man.
They're all in orange. The team is in orange. The crowd is in orange. It is an orange
look at a lot of the environments. A lot of the football environments in the Pacific Northwest are legit, man. Not even just at the college level, but look at Seattle, right? The Seahawks, the 12th man. It's a big deal, man. People get excited. They don't have much else to be excited about up there with all the rain and shit. So they get pumped. They get excited about their football. But I'm here for it, buddy. And I've kind of written off. Me and my dad have talked about sort of bucket list places to go see a college football game, and I'd be truthfully, a lot of those schools have not been on my list. But as I go on, I'm like, man, how cool would it be to go see a game in Pullman, Washington?
I was just about to say Pullman. Like that was the one that stands out for me.
Of all places, right? Or in Eugene. And there's so many. I don't really have a desire to go to the Coliseum.
No, Eugene
or even
would be
the
a
Rose
good one
Bowl
too.
for UC. I mean, if it was the actual Rose Bowl, maybe, but like not to see a UCLA game.
Well, hey, if you ever want to make a trip to Eugene, we could then hit up the Nike employee store and I could go home a very, very happy man. So we got that. And sticking with the Pac-12, this would be the game that everybody talks about, but a little less so after this weekend. But USC travels to Boulder. This one actually kind of intrigues me more than Oregon because I think that Colorado may be a little bit better suited to beat USC based off the fact that USC's defense seems to be playing very similarly to the way that they played last year. Colorado just got an ass whooping on national television, and they're going to be hungry. Deion is going to have those guys ready. This game could be a little bit more intriguing than people may think, even though USC on paper should beat them pretty easily.
Yeah, and similarly to what I was saying about Marcus Freeman, I think this game is going to tell us a lot about where Deion is as a head coach, right? Is how do they overcome adversity? I don't think this is a game they win, but do they come out and put forth a great effort, right? Does it seem like that their heads are in the right place? They've put last week behind them and they're taking the field with the same swagger that they've had all season and the same confidence. That would be a really good sign if we see that. I agree with you. USC's defense has not been impressive. This may very well look like a basketball score by the time it's over with.
And that's cool with me. That's fun to watch.
I mean, it could be some high-flying football, which would be fun to watch. I think, obviously, at the end of the day, USC's got the more high-powered, potent offense, especially when you look at just pure talent, which is why, I guess we're picking that later, so I won't get into the details. But I do think it could be a fun college football game to watch. And I do think there's some other things outside of the score that are interesting. Like I said, how Colorado handles adversity, how USC handles going on the road, and then what will probably be a raucous environment, I can only assume. So We'll see.
You'll have to excuse me. I still have a frog in my throat from being sick. This is just what it's like having a 3-year-old in the house. But we're getting into some conference games now with the SEC. So Florida, off a big win against Tennessee, travels to Lexington, Kentucky, to face the 4-0 Kentucky Wildcats. I always considered Kentucky football to be kind of like Duke football. They were always there. They seem to get beat up on a lot. very solid program over the last 10 years. They've had a lot of really good teams that have really surprised people. So the Gators come off a big win at home. Now they got to travel to what could be a very hostile environment. This one intrigues me because Kentucky's not ranked, so they're not really on anybody's radar in terms of like your average casual fan. I think Florida, though, after that big win, they're going to have to keep themselves motivated and focused because Kentucky wants to start 5-0 and start their SEC season off with a big win, and that would vault them in the top 25. So this is an intriguing one for me.
No, I think so too. And Mark Stoops has done a really good job at Kentucky.
Yes.
He's had some really good football teams. I feel like they've started out like this a lot the last few years, and then it's like once they get into conference play, they start to run into some roadblocks and struggle a little bit. Which of course in the SEC is not uncommon for
Nope.
a team like Kentucky. But I really feel like this could be a year they sort of get over that hump a little bit, and I feel like Florida, especially with the last couple of years, like I feel like Florida gonna Florida, right? Like they're gonna win. They win the big game at home against Tennessee, but they go to Utah and lay an egg. Like I feel like they're very inconsistent. Um,
Yeah, this
they're
feels like a game that they could be like completely flat in.
yeah, and that's kind of my feelings too, which means they'll come out and win by 35 or something. But
But like it
no,
wouldn't surprise you. You'd be like, yeah,
yeah,
that's
I
okay.
mean, yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like they're talented enough to win this game easily, but it just seems like there's a weird, I don't know, motivation, effort roller coaster that they're on somewhat. It's like
Soft coaching is what it is.
maybe
Just go ahead and
it's
say
like
it.
they need, but it's almost like they need that extra incentive, like the Tennessee rivalry at home. They need that extra little bit to like get up for a game.
Here's the thing, though. I'm going to be hot on this one. Listen, if you're playing big time college football, you're playing at the University of Florida. University of Florida has a pedigree. Okay, they have a pedigree. They've won national championships. They've won fairly recent national championships. I'm talking within this particular century. If you can't find motivation to play in the SEC, then you probably shouldn't be playing on an SEC squad. Like if you need that rivalry to get you up for a game like this, it's an indication of soft coaching. It's an indication of a soft team, and you need to be playing somewhere else where the stakes are not as high.
Dude,
I'm sorry.
I 100% agree with where you're coming from, but let me say this: like as a player, a coach,
No,
a
I don't want to
fan,
hear it. I don't want to hear it.
like I'm telling you, it's human. It's human nature, man. Like to go into games. I almost feel like we're more cautious as fans going into games against lesser opponents than maybe a player would be, because I think sometimes players just they just have this confidence, which is what makes them good. But like I don't know, man. Like how many times do we see teams, what we call play down to their competition? We see it in every sport, at every level, all the time.
And they're soft.
Um, and I don't disagree. I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. Like you should be beyond that, right? If you're playing football or any sport at that level, you should be beyond overlooking people, beyond not being motivated, all of that.
This is
But
a conference that says it matters more. It means more. You got to do it. Just put
I
on the big boy pants and get it done.
and maybe they will, man. Maybe the Gators will go in there and handle their business. We'll see.
Maybe they
But
will.
I feel let down.
So the number one team in the country is still Georgia, and I feel like they might be trafficking off of last year, but until you beat them, it's like what Ric Flair used to say: you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And the man is traveling to Auburn this weekend. Now Auburn is another team that I believe is undefeated still. They've kind of been under the radar, and Georgia, they've handled their business, but their first SEC game against South Carolina, they needed a comeback. So they're going into a very, very hostile environment at Auburn, and they're coming off a win over UAB. And which Georgia team is going to show up? The Georgia team that has cleaned house in the non-conference games, or the Georgia team that started slow and needed to come back against South Carolina at home. So this is on the road. This one intrigues me just because Auburn, you never know.
Yeah. Auburn's kind of flown under the radar a little bit.
Similar to Kentucky.
Yeah. Uh, but they got a little better pedigree, obviously. But I think that what we saw out of Georgia against South Carolina, that was at home.
Yes.
This is going on the road in a tough environment. And again, Georgia, much like the Alabamas, Notre Dames of the world, they don't have the privilege of being overlooked by anyone, right? So they're going to get everybody's best shot. I don't know. I'm going to reserve judgment on holding like the South Carolina game against them
Hmm.
because, like, look at last year, right? The Missouri game, they snuck by Missouri at Missouri,
Yes.
and but I feel like every team every year, the best team every year has those types of games. I mean, uh, the Urban Meyer Florida teams never went undefeated. They
Nope.
always and the games they lost were usually to like mid SEC teams. They weren't even. It's not like they lost to the second best team in the conference or something like that.
No,
So
you're right.
yeah, perfection's very difficult, especially over the series of a couple consecutive years. But I think the verdict's still out on Georgia. I agree with you. Until someone beats them, they deserve to be right where they're at. But I'm not sold. I'm not sold yet
Not
on the
yet.
Bulldogs.
Not yet, but that's why games like this are going to go a long way in selling. Like if they go into Auburn and win by 3 touchdowns, starting to feel a little bit more confident this is a
Yeah.
very talented football team. But until then, we never know. Sticking with the SEC, Brian Kelly travels to Mississippi to face Lane Kiffin. This is an intriguing game because you have two guys who couldn't be more different in their coaching approach. And I think even in their just offensive approach and how things are. Ole Miss is coming off a loss in Tuscaloosa, of course, to Nick Saban, which was a game that I thought that they were going to win because, like most people, I thought that Alabama was going to be down this season, and Alabama comes out and has an Alabama game and wins exactly the Alabama way. So obviously, to me, this is an indication of what is Ole Miss made of. And Lane Kiffin has had some success there, but these are the kind of games that he needs to start winning if he wants to be taken seriously in the SEC. Like this is the best conference in the country, no doubt. And here comes Brian Kelly and crew, who everybody laughed at in week 1, but Brian Kelly's going to have these guys ready. He's a great coach, and there's nothing else you can say about that. If Lane Kiffin wants to be in the upper echelon of these coaches, this is the kind of game that he's got to win.
You're right. I think that Ole Miss definitely stands to gain more from this game for
Yes,
sure, and Lane Kiffin and everything else. I mean, it's in Oxford, which is in their favor. But I agree with you. Like, Brian Kelly's a very good coach. He has a very talented football team. It's going to be a good game, I think. I would be surprised if it's a blowout in either direction. It would kind of
agreed.
it would be disappointing because I think both teams are better than that. Not that good teams can't get blown out if they're having a bad day, but I think that both of these teams are better than that, and it'll be a competitive football game. And I'm very, very curious, right? And again, sort of, I'm always rooting for chaos, right? I think it'd be exciting to see Auburn beat Georgia. It'd be exciting to see Ole Miss beat LSU. I'm an underdog guy by nature, and so I just think that the more parity and the more upsets that happen, it just makes my fan heart happy. But I think this is going to be a great football game.
Yeah, I think it will be too. The spread is very low, as we'll get to in crunch time. But last game on the slate. Now you're gonna laugh at this one, but I think this one is funny because of the Wyoming result. But Kansas, number 24, travels to Texas. Now Kansas has had a couple of really impressive wins this year. Remember last year they started 5-0, and it was a nice story. They seem to be continuing on that momentum. And Texas obviously comes in having looked shaky against Wyoming, took care of business against Baylor last week, and now they get a Big 12 foe coming in. And Kansas has there's a lot on the line for them, I think. Like this would be a signature win for what they're doing and what they're trying to build. And Texas cannot afford to lose this game because they need to continue and build on that momentum from their win against Alabama if they want to be seen as a playoff contender. So there's actually a lot on the line in this game so early in the season.
I agree, and it's similar to the Georgia talk, and it's similar to what I just said earlier that uh, Texas, especially at this point, they're going to get everybody's best shot, right? And I think that you have a hungry Kansas team that is kind of just eager to be relevant, right? To be
Yes,
nationally relevant because historically they have been a very mediocre football program, and
that's
they put it.
generous.
Yeah, I mean, extremely, but they've put a couple solid years together, and a signature win like this could really vault them in to the national picture in a serious way. And a win like this could help a lot on the recruiting side of things. And for there's so many positive benefits that could come from winning a game like this.
Yes.
I mean, and these are benefits that would be um, not just these one-off things. I mean, I'm talking, an influx of booster money into the program, a bigger pot to pay for better coach. I mean, there's so many positive things that can come from winning a game like this and putting yourself into that national spotlight. And so they have a lot to play for. I mean, Texas does too, because Texas is still sort of they've done everything they've needed to do so far this year. They're taking care of business, but they're also still sort of riding the coattails of Texas past a little bit,
Yes.
and so I think they're eager to prove that they're for real, right? That they're really back, and this is really a national title contender. And so again, another very intriguing matchup.
I agree. There are other intriguing matchups, of course. We just don't have time to get to them all. But I just want to also remind everybody before we get into the end of this that if you are new to this thread, I see we have a little bit more people here in the feed. That if you are out here representing a school and you'd like us to call that out next week, please let us know in the comments wherever it is that you are watching. Our college roll call is something that we have a good time with. We're adding more schools. So if you're watching now and you're brand new to this, please make sure to let us know who you are representing. All right, man, we have been on here for a little bit and we didn't get to record this week. So you know what that means, right?
I think we get to do a little bit of crunch time.
All right, man. That sound means it is time for crunch time. Once again, we have an extended slate of games. We have 11 games that we are going to pick this time, and we have a lot to get to. So, my man, are you ready?
Iceman, I'm pumped for this, buddy. Let's fire it up.
All right, we're going to start. Number 11, Notre Dame, traveling to Durham, North Carolina to face number 17, Duke. Notre Dame is a 5.5-point favorite in this game. As we talked about, I think that Notre Dame is going to come in motivated. Duke is a really good football team. Do not sleep on them, but give me Notre Dame to win.
Yeah, this is a very, very good Duke football team, but this is an all-business trip for the Irish. To get back on track and get themselves on the path to being in the playoff picture, this is a win they got to have, and I expect them to do it convincingly. So give me Notre Dame, and I'll lay the 5.5.
Number 8, USC, traveling to Boulder to face the now unranked Colorado Buffaloes. USC is a 21.5-point favorite in this game. I think that USC isn't built to really compete with Colorado in terms of being able to blow them out. Colorado is coming off a very, very bad loss. USC can't seem to stop anybody. This is going to be a shootout. I'm going to take Colorado getting 21.5.
Iceman, I'm with you, buddy. I think USC is going to win this football game, but these are two pretty poor defenses and two offenses that have the ability to be very explosive. And so in that case, I'm going to take Colorado plus a 21.5, and I don't know what the over-under is, but take the over.
Number 1, Georgia, traveling to Auburn. Georgia is a 14.5-point favorite heading into this road game. Auburn has been under the radar at 4-0. Georgia is the king of the land. I think that this is going to be a very, very close game, but I'm going to take Auburn with the 14.5.
Yeah, it's really tough to win on the road in the SEC, no doubt about that. And like we talked about, we still have some questions when it comes to Georgia and if they're for real this year. So I'm with you, buddy. I'm going to take the Tigers and lay the Tigers to cover the 14.5.
Number 24, Kansas, traveling to number 3, Texas. Texas is a 16.5-point favorite at home. The Kansas Jayhawks have a lot to prove in this game, and this is the exact kind of game that Texas loses. However, I think that Texas is built to win this season. I think that Quinn Ewers is very, very good. Kansas is going to be up to the task, but you know what? I'm actually going to take Texas to win handily.
Iceman, you might as well get me a leash because I'm walking the dogs this week, buddy. I really like Kansas to keep this one close. Again, I think it's likely that Texas wins, but Kansas is going to give them a run for their money, so I will take Kansas to cover the 16.5.
In a game that I'm sure nobody is talking about, but I'm intrigued by, number 23 Missouri, off that huge win over Kansas State, is traveling to Nashville, Tennessee to face Vanderbilt. Mizzou is a 13-point favorite on the road, but you know what, man? This is the kind of game where a team wins really, really weirdly with a last-minute kick. Vandy is coming in the laughingstock of the SEC at home. A lot of pride on the line. Give me Vandy with the 13.
Oh, buddy, I've been on the dogs up until this point in time, but I just can't see it. I can't see it at all. I think the SEC keeps Vanderbilt around just to keep the GPA up. But I know I feel good, man. I think Mizzou has got some good things going for them, and so I'm going to lay that 13.5 and take Missouri.
Number 13, LSU, traveling to Oxford to face Lane Kiffin and number 20, Ole Miss. LSU is only a 2.5-point favorite on the road. Ole Miss just lost the game that they always seem to lose. Brian Kelly has his guys playing really well. If Lane Kiffin wants to see himself in the upper echelon of the SEC, he's got to win this game. It's hard to win in the SEC, but give me Brian Kelly and the Tigers by 3.
Yeah, I would really, really, my heart wants to take Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin in this matchup, but just talent-wise, I can't see it happening, even though it's in Oxford. I'm going to take LSU and give the 2.5.
And last, number 7, Washington is at Arizona. This is the Budge Last Dance Tour. He is going to be at this game. Washington is an 18-point favorite on the road. It's going to be a tough environment. Arizona, though, I think isn't as good as advertised. I think Washington is playing really well. This is going to be a tough win, but give me Washington with the 18.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. You know, I'm in the camp that's on the Huskies being for real, I think. And so as much as it's probably going to – I don't know how much Budge, what his preference would be in this game, but I'm going to take the Huskies and lay the 18.
Switching to the NFL, kind of a weak slate of NFL games, the Miami Dolphins, coming off their 70-point performance against the Denver Broncos, go to Buffalo and face Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Surprisingly, the Bills are 2.5-point favorites at home. I know that Tua has had some trouble with Buffalo lately. The Bills aren't playing nearly as well despite the result that they had in Washington. The Dolphins are playing really, really fun. You know what, man? Give me the Dolphins in the upset.
Dude, my guy, the fish are for real, man. They have been really impressive. I have no doubt in my mind about what I would do on this, and that is I'm going to just take Miami to win straight up.
The Baltimore Ravens traveled to Cleveland to face Deshaun Watson shitbag and the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are 2.5-point favorites at home as of this. However, it seems like Deshaun Watson may not play in this game. The Ravens come in very, very injured. The Browns have an excellent defense. I think that the Ravens need to win this game after the way they lost to Gardner Minshew and the Colts, so give me the Ravens on the road.
Yeah, this is a weird matchup between two teams that are a little banged up. But I tell you what, buddy, I think I'm going to take the Browns minus 2.5.
In what has got to be the worst game ever scheduled in the NFL ever, the Denver Broncos travel to Chicago to face the Chicago Bears. The Broncos are 3.5-point favorites on the road. Neither of these teams can find a beat, but I think that the Broncos are going to be a little bit less inept than the Bears. So give me the Broncos in what is, I guess, considered a recovery game.
Yeah, is this the week that Russell Wilson and Sean Payton maybe finally get on the same page? If they're going to figure anything out together, this is the week to do it. Sadly, really, I feel really bad for Bears fans because the Bears are putrid. No, I take the Broncos. I'd lay 10 points in this game as the Broncos, but I'll be safe and take the 3.5.
And last, the Cincinnati Bengals, coming off of a big win that they desperately needed, travel to Nashville to face the Tennessee Titans. The Bengals are 2.5-point favorites on the road. Boy, the Bengals have looked bad on offense, but the Titans have looked a lot worse. Joe Burrow got that win under his belt. He played well enough to win. The Titans, I don't think, have any potency. Ryan Tannehill sucks, so give me the Bengals with the 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about the Titans. I like Mike Vrabel. Tannehill seems like a solid guy. Derrick Henry's still battling away in the backfield, but there's just not a lot of firepower left there anymore for the Titans. This is a must-win game for the Bengals on their schedule to keep themselves in the picture in the division. So I'm going to take the Bengals, and I'll give the 2.5.
All right, and something that I forgot to show ahead of time, my man. Last week, I had a great week, 8-4, making me 23-19. You were 5-7 and sitting at 20-22. But this week, the thing about crunch time is this could all turn around in 1 week, and we're still so early with these records. But I'm glad that we are keeping the records. I just want to say, one, for transparency, because the Notre Dame game was a 3-point spread when we picked the game, you and I each picked both teams. It was a push, so I ended up winning because I picked Ohio State, so I ended up winning outright in that regard. So that's the tiebreaker in case any of these things happen, just for transparency's sake. but we're doing pretty well, my man. So that was a good time. Now, we also didn't get to record this week, which means that you are on the hook for something else. Ah, yes, my friend. It is time for Coach's Pick of the Week. As we see here, the West Virginia Mountaineers won by 7 last week. So that means that they covered, and Coach is now on a 4-game heater, a certifiable winning streak back to 6-12 after starting 2-12. So, Coach, we're here, man. You are on a heater. We need to keep on winning. These football gods seem to be blessing you. So, can you bless us with a picketh of the week?
Hear ye, hear ye. I would be happy to extend another winning pick to our listeners or anyone else who would like to be victorious this weekend. It seems that college football specifically has been very friendly to me so far through the first few weeks in these picks, and so I'm going to stay right there. We have the tale of two different teams. One team that is ascending under a new head coach, one team that has a coach that's probably coaching to keep his job, and that is the Iowa State Cyclones traveling to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Sooners. The
I
spread
like
in this
this.
game is 19.5 points. Now, there's a lot to like about Matt Campbell at Iowa State. Even the fact that he attempted to maybe fight a fan 2
Yes.
weeks ago. But that being said, I think that Brent Venables has the Sooners rolling. He's got things moving in the right direction. It's a road game for Iowa State in a tough environment. Boomer Sooner, give me Oklahoma to cover the 19.5.
The Oklahoma Sooners, who I'm a big fan of their softball team, and they are a big fan of this show, to cover the 19-point spread against the Iowa State Cyclones. Well, Coach, I hope for your sake we are sitting here at 7-12, but for everybody else, so let it be written, so let it be done. And just like that, the hour is over, a little bit over an hour, but another fun show, my man. We didn't have Jonah this week, so our super fan was unable to
I
attend this
noticed,
week.
man.
Yeah, I know. It wasn't the same without him, but your dad picked up the slack big time. So we want to thank and shout out Rick Powell for all of his support, love, and all the good vibes that he brings every single week, even if we say things that he doesn't agree with. But he did say that luck was my lady, and I just want to say, I will say that there is a little bit of luck to it, but damn it, I'm good sometimes. So please.
Yeah, buddy.
And wait a minute. Let's see if I can do this. Luck be a lady tonight.
Wow.
There you
That
go, Rick.
was
Little Sinatra.
A+, buddy.
I know. And it was
A+.
not A+. No, it was not. Luck
Goodness,
be a
man.
lady
Feel like I'm
tonight.
in Vegas sitting at the Mirage watching
Oh,
Frank Sinatra.
if ever I could go back in time to see an artist that I've never seen before, it would be old Blue Eyes back in the 50s.
Oh, yeah, man. Like the Rat Pack and just all that would have been
Sipping
fantastic.
a Negroni, sitting there in a sharp suit and tie with a vest and
yeah, man.
a pocket rose and, just watch. I mean, I think about that sometimes because I'm a huge Sinatra guy. And at the holidays, I love Frank Sinatra. Like I listen to the old, I always say this, I'm a crooner over a contemporary any day of the week when it comes to Christmas music, but I love all Sinatra. And you just listen back to like Sinatra at the Sands, especially on vinyl, and you just hear like the glasses clinking and the murmuring in the crowd. And like he comes out, it was just a different time. It was a different time in entertainment. And that kind of entertainment, it's super old, it's dusty, but they don't make that kind of music anymore. And I love it.
Right. No, I love it too, man. Like it's funny, similar but different. Christmas time every year. And it's funny because this has only kind of become a thing in the last, we'll call it 7-8 years. White Christmas. I love watching White
I
Christmas.
hate that movie.
Dude, I love, and my wife's like, this looks old, man.
Oh, it's
like,
old.
She's just not, and it is old.
It's
Well,
also
it's 'cause
7
it's
hours
old.
long.
It's old. It is old, but like, there's just something, and it's nothing like great about the movie, right? But it's just something about it, man. Like it's just you're watching it for what it is. Even like A Christmas Story, right? It's kind of an obnoxious movie in a way, but like you're watching it for what it is. And I
Nostalgia.
think that, yeah, the nostalgia of it, the tradition, And I mean, just think of how many lines from that movie have become like pop culture, right? And so no, but I'm with you, buddy. I like a lot of the old stuff. Back like you said, wearing a sharp suit, back when men dressed like men, right?
I mean, I don't know about all that, but certainly dress better than Congress does sometimes. But hey, that's another
I've
story
heard,
for
yeah.
another day. So maybe next week I'll bust out a little Nat King Cole for you. I think I can get the voice even deeper if I want to. But anyhow, we have reached the end of this show, but I just want to remind everybody that if you want to find any of our content on social media, TikTok at INC Sports is the handle for that. Twitter at Iceman and Coach. Facebook, INC Sports is what you'd search. We're on Twitch. We've actually had somebody watching on Twitch this entire time. So I thank you, whoever it is that you are that are watching on Twitch. Obviously, you're watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can hit subscribe on our channel. Make sure to hit notify so you hear every time we come out with new content. We just put out some content yesterday from Dave and me. And so that is something that you should check out if you're listening or you do listen in the audio space, Apple, Spotify, rate, review, all that good stuff. And the Matty S Media Network is back up in terms of its website, mattysmedia.com. I just did some updates to it, so everything looks nice and clean and uniform, and you can find all the information for all the shows there. Buddy, week 5 is here. I'm excited. We don't have any plans tomorrow. You don't have any plans tomorrow, and we're going to be able to watch some football while a bunch of kids just circle around us asking what the hell is going on. So I'm very excited for this action. And do you have anything else for the viewers here before we
No, just
sign off?
excited for another week of football, man. I feel like the show each week's getting better and better just because the storylines are building, right? So it gives
Yes.
us more things to talk about and engage in, which is a lot of fun. It creates more polarizing opinions and banter, and it gets listeners involved, which is fantastic.
I guess I got kind of hot this week. I mean, I really took it
No,
out on Florida, didn't I?
no, I think that's good stuff. I mean, I just enjoy it. It's been great. Again, another great slate of games tomorrow. And yeah, go Irish, man. Big game tomorrow night. I'll be locked and loaded. My dad is actually he drives a grain truck for a farmer during harvest. And so tomorrow is his first day doing that. And the only thing he fucking cares about is being home in time for the kickoff of the Notre Dame game. So hopefully he's out of the cornfield in time. So we'll see.
Ranger Rick, you better get that lead foot going because you got to get home in time for that kickoff. Well, to everybody else, I want to thank you for watching this week. It's always fun to do this show. As I say every week, I hope this finds you well. I hope this finds you safe. Coach and I will see you next week. This is College Kickoff Eve.